What is missing in really translating the hypothetical promise of circular economy into concrete business opportunities is digital technologies, right? So we need to really see digital technologies, first and foremost AI, as an enabler of circularity. And yet in most companies, digital and sustainability or circularity are seen really separately.
We're here in the Circulator Talk at the UEFA Women's Euro, where we can actually bring the circular topics to a very new target group. And we're very excited to have today Julia Binder with us, professor at the IMD in Lausanne and a specialist in circular business, not just circular economy, we can get back to that. And also with Enrique Hablützel, the Chief Investment Officer of G Impact Capital in Zurich. So thanks so much that you took the time to come here. I would like to start with you, Julia. You published a book with the title The Circular Business Revolution. And it's business and it's revolution. So that's what attracted me for naturally. And when did you have the idea or the feeling, I need to write this book? When and why?
I have to say, I started thinking about circularity, I would say early on in my master thesis. I already wrote about cradle to cradle, which is now 15 years ago.
Oh, I see.
And back in the days, I thought it's just a matter of time until this will really now fly. And then one of the things that I realized, which is about 10 years later, is since then, since we had all these concepts, all these ideas, not that much had changed. So it's still a super attractive theoretical concept, but we really struggle to really translate it into everyday business and into concrete business model opportunities. And when I discussed with my now co-author, Manuel Brown, we did our PhD at the same time, we connected back and we both had the same observation. We said we work with companies over and over again. They love the idea and have no idea how to really put it into practice. And this is where we felt we need to do something where we almost take the business leaders by the hand and take them step by step to say, where do you start? And what do you do really step by step? How do we show you with case examples how to really translate it into concrete business model opportunities? And I think the idea of the title then came when we said, in some ways it's an evolution, but eventually it will be a revolution because what we need is we need to get out of this linear mindset. We need to rethink business fundamentally. And I think a lot of what we've been doing in sustainability is incremental improvements. Right? I'm sorry to say we are all very busy to congratulate us that we did something, but a lot of these are quick fixes and easy wins. And we believe you need to think differently. And this is where the revolution idea comes in.
I like it. So it's to encourage people to think really big and then go that path.
Show you concrete steps together. Right? So you need to understand what is the eventual end goal. And then we show you how to reach it. But for that, you need to think out of the current system. And this is where the revolution part comes in.
Nice, thank you. And you, Enrique, you work with money. You actually help to fund this transformation. And was this early on a dream of yours, or when did you decide to go into the financial world, in the impact finance world?
So, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Being here in Bern, in this iconic place, is just amazing. I will go back to really a personal feeling of investments and how I decided to completely invest myself, my time, wealth, whatever, into this. Is I grew up in a society where there was a lot of differences, right? Like, so I'm Mexican Swiss. I born and raised in Mexico. My grandparents were Swiss German, therefore the Hablützel. And when I was growing up in Mexico, I had opportunities to study in very specific type of education, so private education, American schools and stuff like that, but also I had the privilege to study in the local schools.
I see.
This brought me to different concepts of wealth management. And with my father, he's been always a good example of entrepreneurship for myself, my own career. It was always like, okay, you need to try to put always people together and work with them. He has a very interesting company in his own field, whatever. But I was like already understanding these differences between the people who have something to invest and the other people who are investing their time and effort to have something to eat. So I was like, okay, I really need to balance this world and try to make the whole equation more fair for both. How can we share both of us or both of these groups a way to develop ourselves as society? Therefore, I said to myself, why not? Let's go to Switzerland and try to do it in a place where the balance is at least more shareable. And that's why I end up doing impact investing.
Thank you. That's a really personal story. Then it explains also the energy that you can put in. And I actually would have a question to you, in your position, what is harder? What is more difficult? Is it to find the investors that invest in your funds that you can then invest in companies? Or is it more difficult to find the companies that are investable?
It's a great challenge, right? Like, I think both are a very interesting discussion, let's say, to have, like to match those expectations of each of those groups. I would like to say that it's an example to work with Julia and what she's doing at trying to understand what the big corporations are doing, but at the same time empowering small, medium enterprises to get to that circularity and more sustainable way of thinking. I would like to say both have a very interesting mindset. And what is my challenge is to put them both to work together. I would like to say it's that part of the, okay, let's sit down and see the short version or short vision to make profits, but at the same time, the long vision of creating circular businesses, create more sustainable future. I would like to say that's the main challenge on this.
I see that, and also when you work with younger companies, especially for them, money is usually like money, but there's all different kinds of money. And if you ask for the wrong money, then you're going to be disappointed. So it's what you described, this matchmaking, I know is really difficult. All these criteria have to match to make the investment work in the end. And that to find that balance is a unique talent. And that would be then the question to you, Julia. You mentioned that you work with large corporates, with SMEs and with startups. And it's research based, so data fact based. And do you see, is it then a difference, how the transformation is driven in these companies? Is it more driven from the inside? Is it more driven bottom up or top down? Or is it more driven from the outside? And how do you see the difference among the smaller and the larger companies?
Yeah. No, and it's a super good question. I think, look, startups oftentimes come from a place of, I have a mission, I want to make the world a better place. Interestingly enough, in my PhD thesis, most of the sustainable entrepreneurs that we studied were oftentimes super successful career people, like oftentimes consultants that early on had a lot of money, very little time, and then understood, okay, now I have achieved everything I wanted to achieve in life and I'm only mid-30s. And this is where this rethinking came to say, okay, what do I now do with my life? And this is where they often came into this idea of sustainable startups. And I think what is relevant here is that oftentimes these startups, they start small, but they have difficulties to scale, right? So this is the challenge here. With big corporations, with big companies, what the problem is much more is to say, okay, how do we get it into, because oftentimes they're limited in ways, what can they actually implement in their business? Because they're one part of a very large organization, and their influence, even if they're in a high position, is somewhat limited and constrained because they have shareholders and customers, and there are a lot of expectations. So startups have much more flexibility, but the ability to scale is limited. Big corporations have, if they change just slightly, their impact is massive, but changing something in these rigid structures is extremely difficult, right? So I think the challenges are just very different. You see business leaders coming from a place of the heart in both setups, but I think, again, the challenges are very unique depending on which audience you're talking to. And SMEs are somewhat special and fall in between because oftentimes for them it's, we already work with constrained resources, both finance and human resources. Now, giving that topic on top of me is something they oftentimes try to just push away. It's too much. I don't understand it super well. And it's coming on top of my day-to-day, which I already struggle to manage, right? There's geopolitical conflicts, there's inflation. So how do I manage all these topics? And I think the biggest challenge is, and this is what I want to really try if I now work with different companies, is to say, how can we speak to the people differently, to say that it's relevant and connects to their real-life experiences. And these experiences are different depending on whether you're a startup, whether you're an SME or a big corporate. And we need to reframe this topic to really apply and make it applicable to different worldviews, instead of coming with this, which we often did in the past in sustainability, climate change is important, you have a responsibility to do something, which is a nice narrative, but it's very difficult if you're very much stressed and time and money constrained. So how can we really connect it to your worldview and say, you struggle with geopolitics, you have global supply chains, a lot of dependencies, circularity can be a solution to that. Yeah. And then you have all ears from SME founders as well, right?
Yeah. So you have something?
I was just going to say that that's why I enjoy so much the book of Julia, because you can see frameworks and you can use those frameworks. I mean, I found it a very playable book. My personal opinion. I mean, like, it's because I like to make always graphics on my books, right? Like, I start reading something and I make some notes, and I like to have fun with them. Yeah. And what I did with this one is there's so many frameworks that I started to copy them in other pages, because, you know, you can use them and then say like, yeah, this is not working. I can use it for that. I can apply it as this way, you know, like, and it's a way to engage with other people on learning by doing, having a format that helps others to understand it.
It's very intriguing because, you know, you both have experience since more than 20 years in the field. And how do you see, you know, the changes? I mean, in the last 20 years we observed, but like, I feel somehow in the last 1 or 2 years, things are changing as well. And, you know, what would be your advice to a young entrepreneur or a person in a company that really wants to change something and has now these extra obstacles as it seems? You know, do you feel the same, or do you see a change in the last 1 or 2 years, or not really? And what would be your advice to a person that wants to still go strong in the direction of circular economy or circular business?
You want me to go first?
Please.
So I think the topic is always evolving, right? So it's rarely static. And what we always see in sustainability or circularity is going through hype cycles. There are times where it's just much more on the agenda, and then there are times where AI is very much a hype, or Trump politics is a hype, right? So meaning that we know it's subject to hype cycles. And yes, I think I would agree that in the past, I would say 2 to 3 years, what we've seen is that this topic got a lot of attention in Europe, particularly because of regulation, the Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive. Yeah. But now the interesting thing is it did not necessarily get the attention that I would wanted it, because it was not like, now I'm excited about this topic and I'm looking for business model opportunities. It was much more like, it's becoming a liability, it's becoming a risk, right? So, and it became this check the box mentality. How do I need to do it, but now my entire sustainability team that may have even worked strategically on these topics before was like just trying to find data and so on. And I don't want to be overly critic, because I think this framework still has a lot of validity. It just came at a time where it was too much demand for a very short time. And I think now what is happening is the opposite reverse effect. Now that the EU Commission is watering down the CSRD, and there are no better ways to say it than watering down, because they said they're simplifying, which they don't, right? Simplification would mean largely it's kept in place and we make it easier, and we don't, right? We water it down significantly. And now it almost takes away all of the energy that was in this topic. So it's almost like, okay, AI, right? So I think this is where, at the moment, what we have is a little bit this void where people are like, okay, is this topic still relevant? And now, interestingly enough, what we see is, because now the teams have been built up and they don't have this reporting burden, now they start thinking strategically and say, okay, if I now have a team that has time, let's look into circularity. So I think there are interesting dynamics. It's very rarely that it's like slowly building up. It really goes through these hypes. And we need to somehow sustain the hype now and say, okay, how do we leverage, let's say, maybe also the time that we don't put into reporting to put it into really nice strategic thinking around, could circularity be something that has business value for us?
I like it. Sustain the hype. I like that a lot. And you, Enrique?
Yes, I would like to say that we are in a moment where the tools that we can put in place are faster forward and much easier to build than before, right? Like using the same terms like AI and everything, right? Like when you have a business that might have opportunity, like the traceability or the take back, and you can build it towards data that can back up that information and sell it that way to brands. That is a solution, right? Like, and it can go very fast and straightforward to the big brands to say like, okay, let's say there is take back solutions now in the market that you can help, that you can use to help the users, the end users, to have a special feeling with the brand, but at the same time to commit with the product that they are buying, right? Like, so what is going to happen with that product and the end life of the cycle? And then with these kind of solutions, fast forward is like, okay, go to the brand, click on some buttons, put some information, and be part of the change, right? Like, give this product back to the brand.
I love this because it's so important. I think we need to really see digital technologies, first and foremost AI, as an enabler of circularity. And I think when I was still at EPFL, one of the professors there, many of them said, what is missing in really translating the hypothetical promise of circular economy into concrete business opportunities is digital technologies, right? So, and yet in most companies, digital and sustainability or circularity are seen really separately. And so we really need to bring the two together. And you mentioned a couple of very good examples where digital technologies are key enablers of circular solutions, without which a lot of this would not even be possible.
Totally. And let's put name on them, right? Like one of them is iKeep, for example. They are doing this exactly. So take back solutions, and they put basically the plugin is a software as a system directly in the landing page of the brands, and you can have this transaction that is more circular for a future commitment of the user with the sustainability and the circularity of the product. Yeah. Other type of systems, right? Like, so you have Vital. Vital is this reusability of devices for the consumption of goods. Yeah. And big events, right? Like now the UEFA, for example, they were part of the UEFA in Germany last year. And what they are doing is a full system where you can actually retake and reuse the devices that you normally throw away after using once, right? Like cups, plates, stuff like this. And they also invite the users to be part of that with an app, with a community. And it's what we need a lot, right? Like communities that move forward to solutions in a systemic way.
Very good. Now, we have a kind of the final question would be a very personal one, like for you, Enrique, when you would have an advice for a young company, a young entrepreneur that is looking for money, what do they have to do that they have a chance to get funding from you?
I will turn that around, right? Because it's not just us who's going to do it. In order to become investment ready, be aware of what else you are building around your business model that can help others to grow. Of course, investors are always interested on the most hot thing, the thing that is going to grow exponentially, 10x, those kind of things. But when you focus your business in giving and really grow the ecosystem in a way that is circular, you are going to be seen. So my advice will be always to check out the challenges that you see, maybe in a local base, and see how you are changing those and adapting them to a more circular way, to a more systemic way. How you are gonna change the status quo of that and be passionate about it. Yeah. Give it all. And that's, you are an example of that. And I think it's how we are connected. Yeah. So be like him.
Thank you. And for you, Julia, if you pictured I would be a student, 15 years, 18 years, and I have to decide what to study. Why should I come and study at the IMD Lausanne in your course?
Look, I think if you're at a very young age, you always need to understand what will be a topic that will still have relevance in the future, right? So this is something where I'm surprised when people that I meet are really looking into topics that made money or made success in the past, right? So, which I think there's nothing wrong about it, but is there anything more exciting than working on something that really actually solves concrete problems that we as humanity have? And then connect that to a business case or really find design solutions, right? We talked about this couch here, right? So all of these things is there anything more exciting than working under these kind of, let's say, on these kind of topics? And I think what circularity does as a topic is it kind of really gives you this opportunity to work under constraints. And there's nothing more innovative and creative than working under constraints. And I think as Enrique already said, I think you need to find something that you're passionate about. There is not this linear one solution and career path. And I think we may just need to be much more open to say, okay, I may not study one thing and this will be what keeps me busy for the rest of my life as it was in the past. Be open for your life to have some circles and turns. There is very rarely a linear path. And I think we just need to be open for the opportunities that life gives to us. And I think oftentimes it can be super overwhelming when you're young to make these super decisive decisions in your life. And maybe you need to relax more and just say, okay, what are concrete problems that you're passionate about? There's always something. When I worked with young entrepreneurs, particularly at EPFL, for instance, with young students, what we said is start with something that you really care about. Because if this is the case, then you can be extremely creative in finding solutions. You become a user entrepreneur, right? Because you want to solve your own problems. If you're passionate about the bees not flying around your home anymore, there are ways to deal with that, right? So I think circularity, regenerative, agriculture, all of these, they give you an opportunity to work on topics that really matter beyond just making money. And you can make money with it on top of it.
Thanks a lot. And I would summarize this with relaxed passion is the formula of the future. So thank you so much for joining us here, and enjoy also the game of the Swiss team on Friday, in the quarterfinal here at the Euro Cup in Switzerland. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.